Ethan Walker dropped his duffel bag and stood completely still in his own doorway, his hand already reaching for the sidearm he no longer carried. His bedroom door was open. The light was on, and someone was inside. 8 months overseas. 8 months of sand blood and falling asleep, praying his daughter was okay. He came home early, no calls, no warning, just a father who couldn't wait one more day. What he found stopped him cold. His roommate, standing in his room, wearing his hoodie, surrounded by letters she was never supposed to have. And when she turned around and saw him, she said 4 words that changed everything. "You shouldn't see this." If you're watching this from Texas, Florida, or anywhere across this great country, drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. And if it hits home, hit that subscribe button because this one is just getting started. Ethan Walker had a rule he never broke. Don't count the days. Don't mark the calendar. Don't think about the smell of Lily's hair or the way she laughed too loud at cartoons she'd already seen 100 times. You do that and you lose your edge. You do that and you start making mistakes. And in his line of work, mistakes didn't come with second chances. So for 8 months he didn't count. He worked. He stitched. He carried men twice his size through smoke and chaos, and the kind of noise that doesn't leave you even when the mission is over. He was a combat medic, had been for the better part of 6 years, and he was good at it. Good enough that his commanding officer called him the calmest man under fire he'd ever seen. What his CO didn't know was that the calm was a lie. It was a wall. And on the other side of that wall was a 30-year-old man who hadn't slept a full night since his daughter said, "Daddy, when are you coming home?" On a Tuesday morning video call 6 months ago, and he'd had to look her in the eye and say, "Soon, baby, real soon." He'd lied. Soon turned into 3 more months. Until now. He'd gotten the early release order on a Thursday. By Friday afternoon, he was on a military transport. By Saturday morning, he was stateside. By Saturday evening, he was in a cab, and the driver was talking about the weather, and Ethan wasn't hearing a single word because all he could think about was Lily's face. She didn't know he was coming. He hadn't called, hadn't texted. He wanted to see her real reaction, not the rehearsed one, not the polished one she put on when she knew the camera was rolling. He wanted to walk through the front door and see his daughter's face go from regular Tuesday to the best day of her life in real time. That was the plan. It was a good plan, right up until it wasn't. The cab pulled up to the building at 7:42 p.m. Ethan paid, grabbed his duffel, and pushed through the front entrance. The elevator was broken. Of course it was. It was always broken. So he took the stairs 2 at a time, his boots loud on the concrete, his chest doing something it hadn't done in months. Feeling something. Hope, maybe. Or something close enough to it that the difference didn't matter. 3rd floor. Apartment 3C. His key was already in his hand before he reached the door. He put the key in the lock, turned it, pushed the door open. The lights were on. That wasn't unusual. Maya always left the lights on. She'd told him once, a little embarrassed, that she didn't like coming home to a dark apartment. "I know it's childish," she'd said. "Don't judge me." He hadn't judged her. He'd just started leaving the hallway light on a timer before he deployed. He didn't think much of it at the time. He set his duffel down by the door. The apartment smelled like something had been cooking garlic maybe, or that pasta sauce Maya made from scratch because she didn't trust the stuff from a jar. Lily's backpack was on the couch, one strap hanging over the armrest. A crayon drawing was on the coffee table, half finished, a house with a big yellow sun, and 3 stick figures holding hands. Ethan stood there for a second, looking at that drawing. 3 figures. He counted them twice. Then he heard a sound from down the hall. From his bedroom. His body reacted before his brain did. Shoulders back, breathing, controlled weight shifting to the balls of his feet. 8 months of combat instinct. His hand moved toward his hip before he remembered he wasn't carrying anything. Slow down, he told himself. You're home. You're safe. Think. He walked down the hall quietly. Not deliberately, just naturally quiet, the way a man gets after a few years of doing things in the dark. The bedroom door was open. The light inside was on a warm, low light like the lamp on his nightstand. He stopped in the doorway. Maya Brooks was standing in the middle of his bedroom. She was wearing his old army hoodie, the gray one with the unit patch, half peeled off, and she was holding a stack of envelopes, some open, some sealed, all of them clearly handwritten. Her back was to the door. She was reading one of them, leaning slightly toward the lamp, and she was so focused that she didn't hear him. Ethan stood there for 3 full seconds just looking at her, and then he said, "Maya." She spun around so fast, she nearly dropped everything. The letters scattered, some of them falling to the floor, one landing on his bed, one skidding under the nightstand. Her face went through 5 different things in about half a second. Shock, confusion, recognition, relief, and then something else. Something that looked a lot like fear. Not fear of him. Fear of this moment. "Ethan," she started. "What is this?" She looked down at the letters on the floor, then back up at him. Her mouth opened and closed. "You shouldn't see this," she said. He didn't move. "That's my room, Maya. I know I'm sorry, I just—" She bent down, started picking up the envelopes quickly, like if she got them out of sight fast enough the whole situation would reset. I was going to put them back, Ethan. Just let me—" "Stop." She stopped. He walked into the room. Not fast. Not aggressive. But he walked in, and he picked up the letter that had landed on his bed, and he looked at the handwriting on the front. It wasn't addressed to anyone. There was no stamp, no return address. But the handwriting was Maya's. He knew her handwriting. He'd seen it on the grocery list she kept on the fridge, on the sticky notes she left on the coffee maker when she'd used the last of the grounds and felt guilty about it. He knew it the same way you know things about people you've lived alongside, not because you ever decided to pay attention, but because proximity has its own kind of memory. "These are yours," he said. It wasn't a question. Maya was standing with the rest of the letters pressed against her chest, arms crossed over them like she was protecting something. She looked at him, and he watched her make a decision. He could actually see it happen in her face, that exact moment when someone stops calculating and just goes honest. "Yes," she said. "They're mine." "How many are there?" She hesitated. "Maya, how many?" 23. He was quiet for a moment. 23 letters. 8 months. That was nearly one every week, sometimes more. "Did you send any of them?" "No." He put the letter in his hand back down on the bed. Carefully, like it was something fragile. "Why not?" She let out a breath, slow and shaky. "Because I didn't know how. Because every time I thought about sending one, it felt like too much. Like I was putting something on you that you didn't ask for. You had enough to carry. You didn't need—" She stopped. "You didn't need me adding to it." Ethan looked at her for a long moment. In the 6 months before his deployment, Maya Brooks had been his roommate. Technically, she'd been his roommate for a year and a half. She'd answered the ad he posted after Lily's mom left room available. One kid looking for quiet, responsible tenant. And she'd shown up with 1 box of books, a coffee maker, and a set of medical scrubs, and she'd said, "I work nights 3 days a week. I'm clean, I'm quiet, and I'm good with kids, if you ever need someone to watch her." He'd rented her the room on the spot. That had been 18 months ago. In those 18 months, he'd learned a few things about Maya Brooks. She was 28. She worked the ER at St. Christopher's, which meant she came home some nights looking like she'd been to war herself. She made coffee at 6 in the morning and always made enough for 2. She read actual books, paper books, and kept them stacked by the couch. She had a sister named Mara, who called too often and talked too loud. She was good with Lily. Genuinely good, not just tolerant. She remembered things that Lily didn't like: the crusts on her sandwiches, that Ethan took his coffee black, that the third stair from the top squeaked, and you had to step over it at night if you didn't want to wake anyone up. She'd been a good roommate. He'd never let himself think of her as anything else. "Ethan," she said quietly, "I swear I wasn't going to. Where's Lily?" The shift in his voice stopped her. "She's at your neighbor's, Mrs. Patterson's. I was watching her this weekend, and Ethan, she doesn't know you're back yet. I can go get her right now. Something moved in his chest. He pushed it down. In a minute, he pulled out the chair from his desk and sat down. Old habit from the field. When things got complicated, you sat down. You thought. You didn't react, you responded. Tell me about the letters, he said. Maya looked at the stack in her arms. Then slowly, she sat on the edge of his bed. The same way you sit on the edge of something when you're not sure if you're allowed to be there. I started writing them in September, she said. About 3 weeks after you left. Lily was having a hard time. She cried herself to sleep 2 nights in a row, and I didn't know what to tell her because she'd ask me, "Is Daddy safe?" And I didn't know the answer to that. I didn't know if you were safe. Ethan was quiet, and I started writing because I needed to say things out loud, but I couldn't say them to anyone. My sister would have told me I was overthinking. The people at work don't know you. And Lily was 6 years old. I couldn't. She stopped. So I wrote to you. I knew you'd never read them. I wrote them anyway. What did you say? He asked. She looked down at the envelopes. Everything. Like what? Like the day Lily lost her first tooth and cried because she thought it meant part of her was falling apart. And I had to explain the tooth fairy for 45 minutes before she calmed down. And I kept thinking, you should know this. You should know your daughter was brave about it eventually. Ethan's jaw tightened. He hadn't known about the tooth. Lily hadn't mentioned it on their calls. Or maybe she had, and he'd been too distracted to hear it right. And the day the radiator broke, Maya continued, and it was 40 degrees in here, and Lily decided that was the best possible time to build a fort and camp in the living room like it was an adventure. And I made hot chocolate and we camped in there together. And it was a really good night, actually. He'd known about the radiator. Maya had texted him. Radiator's out, called the landlord. Don't worry. 5 words. No mention of forts or hot chocolate. Why didn't you tell me that part? He asked. Because you were overseas, she said simply. You were doing something that mattered. I didn't want to make it harder to be there by making it too beautiful to be home. The room was quiet for a second. Outside, a car passed on the street below. Somewhere in the building, a television was on. Can I read one? Ethan asked. Maya looked up at him. For a second, he thought she was going to say no. Then, she reached into the stack and pulled one out, not the top one. She sorted through carefully, like she was choosing which one a person could handle, and held it out to him. He took it. The envelope was unsealed. He pulled out the letter inside. It was 2 pages handwritten, dated November 14th. Ethan, Lily asked me today if you were ever scared. I told her everyone gets scared sometimes, even the bravest people. She thought about it for a while. She does that thing where she gets quiet and you can almost see the gears turning, and then she said, I think Daddy's brave because he gets scared and goes anyway. I didn't have an answer for that. I just told her she was right. I think she was right. He stopped reading. He wasn't someone who cried. He'd seen things in the field that would break most people, and he'd learned a long time ago to feel it later when it was safe, when it wouldn't cost him anything. This wasn't the field. This was his bedroom, and it was safe, and he was sitting in a desk chair reading a letter written by a woman who'd spent 8 months quietly keeping his world from falling apart. He folded the letter, put it back in the envelope. You should have sent this one, he said. Maya didn't say anything. You should have sent all of them, he said. I would have... He stopped, started again. I didn't know it was like this. I didn't know She's okay, Maya said firmly. Lily's okay. She's happy. She's good. She talks about you every single day, and she's got your picture on her nightstand, and she is okay. I know, he said. That's not... He pressed his hand against the back of his neck. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? He looked at her. He had been looking at her for the last 20 minutes. Really looking in a way he realized he probably never had before. Maya Brooks, who worked the ER and made coffee for 2, and read paper books and kept his daughter safe, and wrote 23 unsent letters in the dark. I meant I would have written back, he said. She stared at him. "Every single one," he said. "I would have written back to every single one." The silence after that was different from the silence before it. Heavier, warmer. The kind of silence that means something shifted, and neither person is quite ready to name it yet. Then Maya looked down at the letters in her arms. Then back up at him. And she said very quietly, "There's one you haven't seen yet." "Which one?" She didn't answer right away. She set the stack carefully on the bed beside her and pulled one from the bottom. The very bottom, like she'd been keeping it separate and held it out. He took it. It was sealed. The front said only one word in her handwriting, Ethan. He looked at her. "Should I open it?" She held his gaze for exactly 3 seconds. "I don't know," she said honestly. "I wrote it the night before you were supposed to come home. The original homecoming date. And then your orders got extended and I thought maybe I'd just keep it. Maybe it didn't matter. But you kept it." "I kept it." He turned the envelope over in his hands. The seal was intact, clean. She hadn't opened it and second-guessed it. She'd written it, sealed it, and held on to it. "I'm gonna go get Lily," he said. Maya blinked. "Okay." He stood up, set the sealed letter carefully on his desk. "But I'm coming back," he said. "And when I come back, we're gonna talk. Really talk. Not roommate talk. Not how's the radiator talk. Actually talk." She nodded slowly. "Okay." He walked to the door, stopped in the frame. "Maya?" "Yeah." He turned halfway. "That November letter, the one about Lily saying I'm brave because I get scared and go anyway." She waited. "She got that from somewhere," he said. "A 6-year-old doesn't think like that on her own." He let that land. Then he walked down the hall. And the sealed letter sat on his desk, waiting. Ethan was gone for 11 minutes. Maya counted. Not intentionally, she wasn't standing there staring at the clock. But when he walked back through the door with Lily on his hip, the little girl already half asleep and clutching his collar with both fists, Maya glanced at the time on her phone and realized she'd been holding her breath for 11 minutes straight. She'd used that time to put the letters back in the shoebox. All 23 of them. Stacked neatly the way she always kept them, the sealed one on top now because she'd pulled it from the bottom and hadn't decided where it belonged anymore. She'd put the shoebox on the shelf in his closet, where she'd been keeping it for months, tucked behind a box of Lily's old winter clothes, and then she'd stood in the middle of his bedroom, not knowing what to do with her hands. She ended up in the kitchen, making tea she didn't want, just to have something to do. She heard him before she saw him, his boots on the hallway floor. Lily's sleepy voice saying, "Daddy, you smell different." And Ethan's low laugh, a real one, not the polite kind saying, "Different how?" And Lily without missing a beat, like outside, like you were really, really far away. Maya pressed her hand flat against the counter. She heard him carry Lily to her room. She heard the quiet ritual of it, the small negotiations about pajamas, the request for water, the inevitable "one more minute" that Lily always tried the way Ethan's voice stayed low and steady the whole time. Patient, present, like a man who understood that this right here was the most important thing he'd done all day. 20 minutes later, he walked into the kitchen. He'd changed out of his uniform. He was wearing a plain gray t-shirt and jeans, and without the gear, without the posture that the military put into a man's spine, he looked different. Not smaller, just more real. More like the version of himself he probably was when nobody was grading him. He looked at the mug on the counter. "Is there more of that?" "Yeah," Maya said. She got another mug without being asked. He sat down at the kitchen table. Not across from her at the side, the corner seat, the one Lily always fought him for, because it had the best angle to see both the window and the TV. He sat there and put both hands flat on the table and looked at them like they were something he needed to study. Maya set the mug down in front of him. She sat across the corner from him, close enough to talk, far enough to breathe. For a moment, neither of them said anything. Then Ethan picked up the mug, took a slow drink, set it down. "She fell asleep before I even turned the light off," he said. Just out. Like she'd been waiting all day for permission to stop. She always does that when she's overwhelmed, Maya said. Happy overwhelmed, not bad overwhelmed. She did it on her birthday too. Hit a wall at 7:30 and was gone. He looked up. You were there for her birthday. You were deployed, she said simply. Your neighbor brought cake. We did the whole thing, candles, singing the works. She got a little embarrassed when we all sang because she didn't know where to look. A small pause. I have video if you want it. Something crossed his face. Not quite pain. More like the feeling of realizing you missed something you can't get back and understanding that somebody else made sure it didn't go unmissed. Yeah, he said quietly. I want it. She nodded. She'd send it later. That was a later conversation. Ethan, she said. I know. You don't know what I was going to say. You were going to say you're sorry, about the letters, about being in my room, about the whole situation. He looked at her steadily. And I don't need you to apologize for any of it. She opened her mouth, closed it. What I need, he said, is for you to explain something to me. And I need you to be straight with me because I've had a long day and I'm running low on patience for anything that isn't true. Okay, she said. Why my room? She blinked. What? The letters. You kept them in my room, in my closet. He leaned forward slightly. You've got your own room. You've got your own space. Why were they in mine? The question landed exactly the way he'd meant it to. She could feel it, the precision of it, the way he'd gone straight past the easy question to the real one underneath. She looked at her tea. I don't know, she said. And then because he'd asked her to be straight, actually I do know. I just don't know how to say it without it sounding like more than it is. Try. She took a breath. When I wrote the letters, I wasn't writing to the idea of you. I was writing to you. The actual you. The person who lives in that room and leaves his boots by the door and drinks his coffee standing up because he says sitting down to drink coffee feels like giving in. She met his eyes. It felt wrong to keep them in my room. They weren't mine. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Outside, the building creaked the way old buildings do. Somewhere above them, footsteps crossed a ceiling. That's a lot of feeling for a roommate, he said. Not accusatory, just honest. I know, she said, just as honest. He sat back, crossed his arms, not defensive, more like a man settling in for a conversation he's decided to actually have. How long? He asked. How long what? How long has it been more than roommate? She looked at him. Does it matter when it started? It matters to me. She thought about it for real. Not performing the thinking, actually going back. She thought about the Tuesday morning 8 months ago, when she'd come home from a night shift and found him sitting at this same table at 5 a.m., in full uniform, with his bag by the door, and he'd looked up and said, calm as anything, I got called up. Deployment orders came through last night. I've got a car coming in 2 hours. And she'd sat down across from him, and they'd gone through the whole list. Lily's school, the landlord's number, the loose hinge on the bathroom cabinet, and she'd been completely composed the entire time. Professional, practical, roommate. And then he'd walked out the door, and she'd stood at the kitchen window and watched the car pull away, and something in her chest had done something she hadn't expected, and she'd thought very clearly, oh, that's what this is. About 2 hours before you deployed, she said. He stared at her. I didn't know before that, she said. Or maybe I knew and I wasn't looking at it. But when you walked out that door, I felt it. And then it was too late to say anything because you were already gone. He unfolded his arms, put them back on the table. 8 months, he said. 8 months. And you wrote 23 letters. 23 letters. And you didn't send a single one. Not a single one. He rubbed a hand over his jaw. She could see him processing it, not judging, just taking it in the way he took everything in. That quality she'd noticed about him early on, that stillness. Most people reacted first and thought later. Ethan did it the other way around. Why? He finally asked. Why not just say something before I left, or on a call, or even a text? Why the letters? Because, she said slowly, I didn't know what you felt. And I wasn't going to put that on you while you were in a combat zone. It wasn't you were over there doing something real. Something that actually mattered. And I was here, and whatever I was feeling was my problem to deal with, not yours. It's not a problem, he said. It was at the time. He looked at her for a long moment. What does the sealed letter say, Maya? Her stomach dropped. She'd known he was going to ask. She'd known it since he'd set it on the desk and said he was coming back. I wrote it the night I thought you were coming home, she said. November. When the orders said you'd be back by the 22nd. I know. I was supposed to be. I sat down that night, and I wrote everything I'd been editing out of all the other letters. All the things I'd convinced myself not to say. She wrapped both hands around her mug. And then the orders changed and you didn't come home, and I sealed it. And I put it at the bottom of the box. And I told myself it didn't matter because if you'd come home in November, you would have walked in and I would have smiled and said, welcome back, and handed you your mail, and it would have been fine. But I didn't come home in November, he said. No. I came home tonight. Yeah. And the letter's still there. Yeah. She looked at him. On your desk. He pushed back from the table slowly. Stood up. Didn't say anything. She thought he was going to go to his room, go read it right now, catch her completely off guard, and she braced for it the way you brace for impact when you see it coming. Instead, he went to the counter, refilled his mug, came back and sat down. Tell me about Lily, he said. She blinked. What? The last 8 months. Tell me about her. All the stuff that didn't make the phone calls. He settled back in his chair. I want to know. It was such a pivot that for a second she didn't know how to respond. And then she realized what he was doing. He wasn't avoiding the letter. He was choosing this first. Choosing his daughter first, the way he always did. And she felt something shift in her chest. Something that had been braced against impact relaxed. Okay, she said. Where do you want me to start? Start with the tooth. She smiled before she could stop it. She was so dramatic about it. Tell me. So she told him. She told him about the tooth and the tooth fairy negotiation that nearly broke her, and the birthday party, and the Halloween costume that Lily had changed her mind about 4 times before settling on a firefighter, because as she'd explained very seriously, firefighters help people, and that's what Daddy does. She told him about the parent-teacher conference, where Lily's teacher had said she was reading 2 years above grade level, but sometimes got so absorbed in a book that she missed the transition to the next activity. She told him about the Saturday morning 2 months ago when Lily had crawled into Maya's bed at 6 a.m. and said, "Can we make pancakes?" And they'd made pancakes, and Lily had talked the entire time, just talked and talked about her dad things. She remembered things she was excited to show him when he got home, a picture she'd drawn that she'd been saving. Ethan listened to all of it. He didn't interrupt. He asked small questions. What did she say? And what did you do? And his face did things that a man's face does when he's hearing about his kid. That complicated mix of love and missing and gratitude, and something that might have been grief, not for anything lost, just for time that moved forward, whether you were there for it or not. It was past 11 when Maya finally wound down. The tea was cold. Neither of them had moved. She's good, Ethan said finally. Not a question. She's really good, Maya confirmed. She's got your steadiness. Even when she's upset, she gets quiet instead of loud. She thinks before she reacts. He almost smiled. Her mom used to say that was the most frustrating thing about me. It was the first time he'd mentioned Lily's mother. Maya had known in the broad strokes, knew she'd left when Lily was 3, knew it hadn't been dramatic, just a slow drift that ended with a conversation and a box of things, and a custody arrangement that mostly meant Lily stayed with Ethan, because that was what they both agreed was best. She'd never pushed for details. He'd never offered them. It's not frustrating, Maya said. It means she's going to be okay. Kids who can get quiet and think they're going to be okay. He looked at her. You're good with her. She's easy to be good with. No, she isn't, he said. She's 6. 6-year-olds are exhausting. She's not exhausting, Maya said. She's like a person who came out already knowing who she was. You just have to keep up. Something moved in his expression. Something unguarded. She saw it happen, saw him let something through the wall, and then saw him pull it back, not all the way, just enough to stay in control. Maya, he said. Yeah. I'm going to be honest with you, because you were honest with me. She waited. When I left 8 months ago, he said I told myself you were the roommate, that's all. I had Lily to think about, and the deployment to get through, and I didn't have room for anything else. He paused, and I believed it. Right up until I was on a transport out of there 2 days ago, and I realized that the thing I was most looking forward to, not just Lily, but the apartment, the coming home to it, wasn't just seeing my daughter. The kitchen went very quiet. I thought about you making coffee, he said. That's the thing I kept thinking about, you making coffee in the morning. Which is, I know how that sounds. It sounds like a man who got very attached to the routine, she said carefully. It sounds like a man who should have figured something out sooner. She didn't answer. She was afraid to. I'm not saying I know what this is, he said. I'm saying I'm not walking back in here and pretending it's nothing. I did 8 months of pretending. I'm done with that. Her hands tightened around her mug. Ethan. And then her phone buzzed. She ignored it. It buzzed again. You should check that, he said. It's fine. It buzzed a 3rd time, and then a 4th, and then a notification sound she didn't recognize, not a text, not a call. An alert from an app she almost never checked. She picked it up, looked at the screen. Her face went still. What? Ethan asked. She turned the phone around so he could see it. It was a message from an unknown number. No name, just a string of digits she didn't recognize. And the message said 4 words, nothing else. Check the bottom drawer. Ethan looked at it, then at her. What drawer? I don't know, she said. And she meant it, she genuinely didn't know. Her first instinct was her own dresser, but this number wasn't in her contacts, and nobody who knew her would send something like this without a name attached. And the timing. Her phone buzzed one more time. The same number. A second message. His bedroom. Bottom drawer of his desk. The temperature in the room felt like it dropped 10 degrees. Ethan was on his feet before she processed that he'd moved. He was down the hall in 3 seconds. She followed him, her phone in her hand, both of them moving quietly so they didn't wake Lily. He went to the desk. The sealed letter was still on top, exactly where he'd left it. He looked at it for half a second, then opened the bottom drawer. Inside was a plain manila envelope. Not his. Not anything he'd put there. He knew every single thing he'd left in that drawer before deployment, and this wasn't one of them. He picked it up. Opened it. Inside were photographs. 3 of them. The first, Maya and Lily in the grocery store. Lily standing in the cart, arms out. Maya steadying her with one hand and reaching for something on the shelf with the other. The photo was taken from outside the store through the glass. Long range. Like surveillance. The second, Maya sitting on the front steps of the building, talking on her phone. Taken from across the street. The third, the building's front entrance with an arrow drawn in red marker. No note, no explanation. Just the arrow. Ethan stared at the photos. Maya's hand found the doorframe. Ethan, she said. I see it. Those weren't there before. I know they weren't. He set the photos on the desk face down methodically. His voice had gone completely flat in the way that didn't mean calm, that meant the opposite of calm. Someone's been in this apartment. The locks? Someone's been in this apartment, he repeated. And they were watching you. Watching Lily. She felt it then. Not fear exactly, more like the floor shifting under something she'd thought was solid. She looked at the anonymous messages on her phone. She looked at his face, and she'd seen enough ER patients in shock to know that what she was looking at now wasn't shock. It was a man running a very fast, very cold calculation. "Call your sister," he said. She stopped. "What?" "Your sister Mara." He looked at her directly. "Call her right now." "Why would—" "Because somebody knew about the letters," he said. "Someone knew where the box was. Someone knew which drawer to look in." He picked up the anonymous messages, read them again. "Someone who knows this apartment. Someone who knows you." He held her eyes. "Call your sister." She dialed Mara before she'd fully decided to. It rang once, twice, 3 times. And then Mara picked up, and before Maya could say a single word, her sister said in a voice that was trying very hard to sound normal and failing, "Hey, is Ethan home yet?" Maya went absolutely still. Ethan watched her face. He saw the moment she understood. "Mara," she said. Her voice was quiet, precise. The voice she used in the ER when something was wrong and she needed information fast. "Where are you right now?" A pause. Then, I'm close by, actually." "How close?" Another pause. Longer. "Mara, how close?" "I'm in my car," she said. "On your street." Maya looked at Ethan. Ethan looked at Maya. "Come upstairs," Maya said. "Right now." She hung up. She and Ethan stood in his bedroom for 90 seconds that felt like 10 minutes, neither of them speaking. They could hear the street outside. They could hear Lily's small, even breathing from down the hall, completely peaceful, completely unaware. The buzzer rang. Ethan went to the intercom and let Mara in without a word. They heard the elevator not working. They heard footsteps on the stairs. And then the door opened, and Mara Brooks walked in. And the first thing Maya noticed was that her sister was already braced, already defensive, already carrying the particular expression of someone who has done something they're not sure was right and has been working out their defense ever since. She was 32, 3 years older than Maya. She worked in real estate and wore her confidence like a second coat. Right now, standing in the doorway, the confidence was fraying around the edges. She looked at Ethan. "Hi." "Hi," he said, flat. She looked at Maya. "Before you say anything—" "You put the envelope in his drawer," Maya said. Mara blinked. "How did you take those photos?" "A beat. I hired someone to." The room went very still. Maya heard the words, processed them, felt something cold move through her. "You hired someone to photograph me." "I hired someone to document," Mara said quickly. "That's different." "It's not different," Ethan said. He hadn't moved. He was standing completely still, the way he'd been standing still when Maya first turned around and found him in the doorway. And she realized now what that stillness meant. It wasn't calm. It was control. Extremely deliberate control. "You hired someone to surveil my apartment, and my daughter." Mara's jaw tightened. "I was trying to help." "Help who?" Maya demanded. "Help how?" "By terrifying me with anonymous messages, by going through, how did you even get in here? How did you get a key?" Mara had the grace to look at the floor. "Your spare. The one you keep in the kitchen drawer. I copied it 6 months ago when I watered your plants while you were at that conference. You copied my key. I was worried about you." The defensiveness was cracking now, something underneath it that was more genuine. "Maya, you have been in love with this man for 8 months, and you have said nothing and done nothing, and every time I bring it up, you tell me you're fine, and you are clearly not fine. You were fading. You were writing letters to someone who didn't know they existed and taking care of his kid and his apartment and just—" She stopped. Her voice had gone somewhere rawer. "I couldn't watch you do that to yourself anymore." The kitchen was silent. Ethan looked at Maya. Maya looked at her sister. And somewhere in that silence, something that had been tangled started to come apart. Not cleanly, not without damage, but coming apart nonetheless. Because Mara wasn't wrong about the fading. Maya knew she wasn't wrong. She'd felt it herself, some version of herself getting quieter and quieter over the past 8 months, accommodating, adjusting, making herself small enough to fit in a space she hadn't been invited to fully occupy. She'd just never expected anyone to notice. "Mara," she said. Her voice came out tired. Not angry anymore. Just tired. "You can't do that. You cannot just decide what's best for me and act on it without asking me." "I know. Those photos are—" "I'm sorry about the photos," Mara said. And she sounded it. "That was, I thought it would show him what he was walking back into. What you'd built here. I thought if he saw—" "What I built," Maya said. "It's his apartment, Mara. I'm the roommate." "Stop saying that," Mara said sharply. "You are not just the roommate, and you have not been just the roommate for a very long time, and the only person in this room who still believes that is you." She looked briefly at Ethan. Ethan didn't correct her. That was when Maya's breath caught. He was looking at her. Just looking at her. And he wasn't disagreeing. And that moment, that small, devastating moment, was its own kind of answer. Mara looked between them. Then she picked up her bag from the floor where she'd dropped it. "I'm going to leave," she said. "And I'm going to return your key. And I am genuinely sorry for the way I did this, even if I'm not sorry for why." She set the key on the counter. She looked at Maya one more time, a look that was older sister shorthand for, "I love you, and I went too far, and I know it." And then she looked at Ethan. "She wrote those letters every week," Mara said to him quietly. "Every single week. She read me some of them on the phone. I don't know if that matters to you, but it should." Then she left. The door closed behind her. Maya and Ethan stood in the kitchen, neither of them speaking. The key sat on the counter between them. The photos were face down on the desk in the bedroom. The sealed letter was still there too, waiting. Lily slept peacefully down the hall. Ethan reached over and picked up the key, held it for a second, set it back down. "She's not wrong," he said. "Ethan, I'm just saying she's not wrong." He looked at her. "About what you built here. You didn't have to do any of this. The letters, Lily's birthday, the fort in the living room, 23 weeks of—" He stopped. "You didn't have to do any of it." "I wanted to," she said. The simplest truth she'd told all night. "I know." And something in the way he said it, low certain, made her think he'd known for longer than she'd expected. He looked at the counter, at the key, at his hands. Then he looked at her. "I'm going to read the letter," he said. She nodded. She'd known it was coming. "Tonight." She nodded again. He pushed back from the counter, walked down the hall, stopped at Lily's door. For just a second she heard him stop, heard the quiet, and then kept going to his room. Maya stood in the kitchen. She didn't follow him. She didn't need to be there for that. She'd written the letter alone in the dark when she thought it would never matter. Whatever happened when he read it, that was between him and the version of her that had finally, one November night, stopped editing herself. She picked up her mug, went to the sink, rinsed it out, and waited. He closed his bedroom door. Not because he needed the privacy. Lily was asleep, and Maya was in the kitchen, and the apartment had gone the kind of quiet that only comes after something big has moved through it. He closed it because what he was about to do felt like it required a boundary. A line between before and after. He sat on the edge of his bed. The sealed envelope was in his hand. He'd picked it up off the desk without thinking about it, the way you pick up something that was always meant for you even before you knew it existed. He looked at his name on the front. Just Ethan. One word. Her handwriting. He thought about what Mara had said on her way out. She wrote those letters every week. Every single week. He'd already known that from the count, 23 letters, 8 months. The math wasn't complicated. But knowing the count and hearing it said out loud by someone who'd listened to them on the phone were two different things. He turned the envelope over. He opened it. 2 pages. Same as the November letter she'd let him read. Her handwriting was even and unhurried, which told him she'd written it carefully, not in a rush. She'd sat down and decided every word. He started reading. Ethan. I've started this letter 4 times tonight. The other 3 versions are in the trash. This one I'm going to finish because I told myself, if you were really coming home tomorrow, I owed you something true. You're going to walk in that door, and I'm going to hand you your mail, and I'm going to say, "Welcome home," and I'm going to mean it, and none of what I'm about to write will ever come out of my mouth, because I'm better at taking care of things than I am at asking for anything. You probably already know that about me. You notice things. You always have. He stopped. Read that last line again. You notice things. You always have. He hadn't known she'd noticed that he noticed. He'd thought he was subtle about it. Apparently not. He kept reading. Here's what I know. I know that Lily calls me Maya at school, but sometimes at home when she's tired or scared or just not thinking about it, she calls me something else. She's only done it 3 times. I corrected her every time, but I want you to know it happened because you should know, and because every time it happened, I felt something I didn't have the right to feel. He went still. He read that paragraph again. He knew what she was saying. He understood exactly what she was saying and what Lily had called her, and why Maya had corrected it 3 times instead of letting it land. And the restraint in that, the deliberate, careful restraint of a woman who understood boundaries so precisely that she enforced them even against things she wanted, did something to him that the 22 other letters combined had not quite managed. He kept going. I'm not telling you this to make you feel guilty or obligated. I'm telling you because I think you should make your decisions with real information, and the real information is this: somewhere in the last 8 months without meaning to, I stopped living here and started belonging here. And I don't know what to do with that. I don't know if there's anything to do with it at all. What I know is that I'm not temporary. I don't mean that as a demand. I mean it as a fact about myself that I'm only now understanding. I have never been someone's placeholder. I can't be. And if that's what this is, if I'm the person who kept things running while you were gone and nothing more, then I need to know that. Because I can leave. I know how to leave. I just need to know if I should. I think that's all I wanted to say. I think that's the thing I've been not saying for 8 months. Welcome home, Ethan. Maya. He sat with the letter in his hands for a long time. The clock on his nightstand read 11:58. He'd been in here for maybe 12 minutes. It felt longer. It felt like the kind of time that doesn't measure in minutes. He thought about the question at the center of the letter. If that's what this is. She'd asked it in November, sealed it, and kept it for 3 more months, under the assumption that it would never matter. She'd been prepared to never know the answer. She'd been prepared to just keep going, keep making coffee for 2, keep watching Lily, keep writing letters she never sent, and at some point quietly understand whether she had a place here or not. That was the thing that got him, not the feeling she'd admitted to, the endurance of it. He stood up. He walked out of the bedroom. Maya was still in the kitchen. She was sitting at the table now, not doing anything, no phone, no book, no pretense of being occupied. Just sitting there with her hands folded in front of her, waiting. She looked up when he came in. She looked at the letter in his hand, and then at his face, and he watched her try to read him and fail, because he'd had years of practice at unreadable. He pulled out the chair across from her and sat down. He set the letter on the table between them, face up. She looked at it. She didn't touch it. You wrote that I notice things, he said. She nodded slowly. You do. Then I'm going to tell you what I noticed. He leaned forward slightly, elbows on the table. I noticed that you never once asked for anything. In 18 months, not once. You asked if the heat was bothering me. You asked if Lily had allergies. You asked if I wanted the last of the coffee. He paused. You never asked for a single thing for yourself. She was quiet. I noticed, he continued, that when you came home from bad shifts, the really bad ones, you'd sit in the kitchen for exactly 20 minutes before you went to bed, not longer. Like you'd given yourself a time limit on feeling it before you had to put it away. He held her eyes. I noticed that you read the same 3 books over and over, different ones every cycle. I never asked you why. She swallowed. Why are you telling me this? Because you wrote that I noticed things and you made it sound like something you'd observed from a distance. He sat back. You were not at a distance, Maya. You were right here, and I noticed everything. The clock on the microwave changed. 12:01. Tomorrow now. She called you Mom, he said. It wasn't a question. Maya's breath caught. She hadn't confirmed it hadn't said the word. He'd gotten there himself, same as she'd expected he would. 3 times, she said, almost a whisper. And you corrected her. Every time. Why? She looked at him like he'd asked her why she breathed. Because I'm not. Because she has a mother. Because I had no right to. Her mother has called twice in the last year, Ethan said. The flatness in his voice on that sentence wasn't anger. It was something older and more tired. I know you know that because you're the one who answered the phone the second time and told me about it when I called that night. She remembered. Lily had been in the bath. The number had come up she'd picked up on instinct, and Sarah Lily's mother had asked in an oddly casual voice if Lily was available. Maya had said she was in the bath and offered to have Ethan call back. Sarah had said that's fine and hung up. Maya had mentioned it to Ethan on his nightly call like it was a logistical note. He'd gone quiet for a moment and then moved on. Ethan, she said, what Lily calls me doesn't change what I am. No, he said. It doesn't. But it changes what I know. He picked up the letter, looked at one line, read it out loud. Somewhere in the last 8 months, without meaning to, I stopped living here and started belonging here. He set it down. I want to ask you something. She waited. If I'd come home in November, he said, if the orders hadn't changed, what would you have done? Would you have given me this letter? She thought about it honestly. No. Would you have said anything at all? Probably not. So you would have just kept going, same as before? Yes. He shook his head slowly, not in judgment, in something that looked more like disbelief. Maya, I've known a lot of people who were good at endurance. Soldiers, medics, people who put their heads down and keep moving because that's the only way to get through it. He looked at her directly. I've never met anyone who applied that to their own heart the way you do. She didn't have an answer for that. You wrote that you're not temporary, he said. You wrote it like a fact, like you were stating it for the record. I meant it that way, she said. I know you did. He leaned forward again. So let me state something for the record. She went very still. You are not a placeholder, he said. You are not the roommate who kept things running while the real life waited somewhere else. You are... He stopped. Chose his words the way he chose everything carefully, without waste. You are the reason my daughter still talks. After I left in those first weeks, I know how hard that was because she told me on our calls. She was scared. She missed me. And she made it through because of you. Not because I called every week. Because of you. Maya's hands tightened on the table. That's not a small thing, he said. That is not something a roommate does. That is something a person does when they've decided that someone else's kid is worth their whole heart. He let that sit for a second. And I've been standing on the outside of that for 8 months, telling myself it was just arrangement, practicality, convenience. Ethan? Let me finish. She stopped. I told myself it was practical, he said, because the alternative was terrifying. Because I've got a kid and a career that takes me overseas, and a history of being left and letting myself believe that someone was choosing to stay, not because they had to, not because it was convenient, but because they actually wanted to be in this specific life. He exhaled. That's a lot to let yourself believe. She looked at him. It's true, though. I know that now. It was true before now. I know that too. He rubbed his hand over his face. When he looked at her again, something had shifted. The wall was still there, but there was a door in it now. The question is, what we do with it. She'd been waiting for this part. She'd been dreading it and wanting it at the same time, the way you dread the moment a wound gets cleaned because it's going to hurt before it gets better. I don't want to be careful with you, she said. I've been careful for 8 months. I'm exhausted from being careful. Something moved in his expression. Then don't be. I'm serious, Ethan. I need you to understand what I'm actually saying. I'm not saying, let's see what happens. I'm saying I'm in this. I have been in this. And I need to know if you're capable of being in it with me, or if you're going to spend the next 6 months being careful and measured and, hey. His voice cut through gently. I'm sitting here, aren't I? She blinked. I came home tonight, he said, and I could have walked in, seen the situation, tucked Lily in, and had a very polite conversation about boundaries. I could have done that. It would have been easier. He held her gaze. That is not what I did. She took a breath. No, it's not. I'm not good at half measures, he said. Ask anyone who's ever worked with me. When I commit to something, I commit. That's not going to be a problem. He paused. What might be a problem is that I don't know how to do this slowly. I don't know how to do the let's take it one step at a time version of something I've apparently already been living for 8 months without calling it what it was. She almost smiled. I don't know how to do it slowly either. Good, he said. Then we're not going to. And for the first time all night, the air between them was something other than tension. It was still complicated. It was still full of things that would take time, real conversations, real adjustments. A 6-year-old who would need things explained in ways that made sense to a 6-year-old. None of that was simple. None of it was going to resolve itself by morning. But it was honest. For the first time, it was just honest. Then Maya's phone went off again. Not a buzz, a full ring, loud in the quiet apartment. She grabbed it fast before it could wake. Lily looked at the screen and frowned. Unknown number. Same string of digits from before. She showed Ethan. He looked at it. Something changed in his face. The warmth that had been there a second ago receding, replaced by that other version of him, the one that calculated. Answer it, he said quietly. She did. Put it on speaker. 3 seconds of silence. Then a voice. Filtered like it was going through something not disguised exactly but muffled. Like someone speaking quietly in a small space. A woman's voice. You found the photos, it said. Maya's spine went rigid. Who is this? That doesn't matter right now. What matters is that you look at the third photo again, not the arrow. Look at what's in the background. I'm not playing. Look at the background of the third photo. The voice said again, firmer this time, with an urgency that overrode the muffling. And then lock your door. The line went dead. Maya and Ethan looked at each other. He was already moving. Back down the hall into his bedroom, picking up the third photo from the desk. The one with just the building entrance and the red arrow. He flipped it over, held it under the lamp. Maya came in behind him and looked over his shoulder. She'd missed it the first time because the arrow had pulled her eye. In the background, half in shadow across the street from the building entrance, there was a car, dark-colored, parked at an angle, and in the driver's seat, barely visible, the outline of someone sitting still, watching. The photo had been taken 3 days ago. The timestamp was in the corner. She'd missed that too. 3 days ago, 2 in the afternoon. Was this taken by whoever Mara hired? She said. I don't know, Ethan said. Get Mara on the phone. Ethan. Right now, Maya. She called Mara. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. She tried again. Same result. She was just here, Maya said. She can't be that far. Text her. He was still looking at the photo. Tell her we need to know exactly who she hired and when they stop surveilling the building. Maya typed the text. Hit send. Watched the delivered notification appear, then waited for the read receipt. It didn't come. Ethan set the photo down. He went to the front door and checked the lock, deadbolt, and chain, both of which he engaged with the quiet efficiency of a man who'd spent years securing perimeters. He went to the window. He didn't open it. He just stood close to it and looked out at the street below. There's no car out there now, he said. That photo's 3 days old. I know. He stepped back from the window. His jaw was set. Someone had eyes on this building before I came home. Maybe it was Mara's person the whole time. Maya said. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe, he said. But the way he said it wasn't convincing. Not to her, and clearly not to himself. She looked at the photos again. The grocery store. The front steps. The building entrance. 3 separate locations. 3 separate days, she realized now looking at the timestamps on all 3. They weren't all taken the same day. They'd been taken a week apart. Someone had been documenting patterns. Mara said she hired someone to document, Maya said slowly, to show you what you were coming home to. Right. But Ethan, why would Mara need 3 weeks of documentation? Why not just take a few pictures one afternoon? Why photograph the building entrance at all? He looked at her. I don't know. She looked at the photos. Something was pulling at the back of her mind, something she couldn't quite get to. The filtered voice on the phone. Look at the background. Lock your door. Not a threat. A warning. Whoever had called didn't sound like someone trying to scare them. They sounded like someone who knew something and was trying to be careful about how they said it. She picked up her phone and went to the call log. Hit the unknown number. It rang once and went to an automated message. Number not available. Disconnected or blocked. It's a burner, she said. Or a VoIP. He came to stand beside her, looking at the call log. Maya, think about who knew you had letters in this apartment. Who knew which drawer to look in? She'd already been thinking about it. Mara said she copied my key 6 months ago. Right. So she had access. She could have put the envelope in the drawer. She did put the envelope in the drawer. She admitted that. What she didn't admit to, he said carefully, is hiring someone for 3 separate weeks of surveillance. She said she hired someone to document. She didn't say how long ago or what they were told to look for. Maya's mind was moving fast now. Something didn't fit. Mara was impulsive, yes. Mara would absolutely meddle in her sister's love life. Mara would absolutely go too far. But the photos, the careful timestamps, the different locations, the building entrance with the arrow that was methodical in a way that Mara wasn't. Mara's version of helping was loud and direct and badly timed, not a weeks-long surveillance operation. Ethan, she said slowly, what if Mara didn't hire the person who took these photos? He looked at her. What if she hired someone and someone else hired someone else, and those are 2 different sets of eyes? She held up the photos. What if whoever called us isn't connected to Mara at all? The apartment felt very quiet all of a sudden. Then someone else has been watching this building, he said, for their own reasons. And they wanted us to find the photos. They called to make sure we looked at them closely. She met his eyes. That's not a threat, Ethan. That's a heads up. He was already thinking through it. She could see the machinery of it running behind his face. 6 years of military medicine, of rapid triage, of separating what mattered from what didn't in high-pressure situations. He didn't panic. He sequenced. Does anyone know you're connected to me? He asked. Outside of people who know us both. She thought about it. I mean, colleagues at the hospital know I live with a veteran. I've mentioned you. But not by name. No. Anyone from your past old conflict, anything. I'm an ER nurse, Ethan. I have difficult patients sometimes, but nobody who would... What about my past? She stopped. He was looking at her steadily. I've done 6 years of combat medicine. I've been in places and around people and situations that don't always stay contained. He said it matter-of-factly, not dramatically. I'm not saying that's what this is. I'm saying it's a variable. She hadn't thought of that. She'd been assuming this was about her, about the letters, about Mara's interference. She hadn't thought about what Ethan might have brought home with him, not in a physical sense, but in the way that some of what a man does in that line of work follows him in ways he can't always see. Her text to Mara finally showed a read receipt. 30 seconds later, Mara called back. Maya answered immediately. Did you hire someone to photograph the building? No, Mara said. Her voice was wrong tighter than usual. I hired someone to take a few photos of you and Lily at the park and the grocery store. That's all. The grocery store ones and the steps. That's what I had. 2 photos, Maya said. Yes, just 2. The third photo wasn't yours. A pause. What third photo? Maya described it. The building entrance, the arrow, the timestamp. Mara's silence lasted 4 full seconds. Long enough to be real, long enough to be genuine. Maya, that wasn't me. That wasn't anyone I hired. I never asked anyone to photograph the building. Who did you hire? Ethan asked. He'd moved close enough to hear clearly. Mara hesitated, then said, A private investigator, Rebecca Cho. She's licensed. I've used her before for a real estate dispute. She's legitimate. Get me her number, Ethan said. Ethan, she's not. Now Mara. Mara gave it. Ethan took it and stepped out of the room. Maya stayed on with Mara. I didn't know about a third photo, Mara said quietly. I promise you, I didn't know. I believe you, Maya said. And she did. But someone put that photo in the envelope with yours, and someone called us and told us to look at the background. Which means whoever called is trying to warn us, Maya said. Yeah. A beat of silence. Then Mara said very quietly, Maya, I'm going to come back. No, stay home. I'll call you when I know more. She hung up. She could hear Ethan in the hallway talking low and even, his voice when he was working. She looked at the 3 photos again laid out in a row on the desk. She looked at the figure in the car, the one she'd missed the first time, still, patient, watching. She thought about who could know this address, this apartment, this particular angle of a life that she'd built quietly over 18 months with a man she'd been afraid to name her feelings for. She thought about the voice on the phone. A woman. Careful, urgent. Lock your door. Not a stranger. Nobody who called like that was a stranger. She picked up the photo, looked at the figure in the car one more time. Something about the angle of the shoulder. Something about the way the head was turned. And then slowly, like a key turning in a lock, she thought of someone. Ethan came back into the room. Rebecca Cho answered. She confirmed she took 2 photos, the grocery store and the steps. She said she delivered both to Mara's email last week and closed the job. The third photo isn't hers, Maya said. No. She looked up at him. Ethan. She held the photo up. Look at the figure in the car again. Not the car, the person, the angle of the head, the way they're sitting. He looked. She watched his eyes, and she saw the exact moment he recognized something. She saw it happen a flicker fast and controlled, but there. His jaw tightened by a fraction. Do you know who that is? She asked. A pause. Brief. Just long enough to tell her the truth before he said a word. Yeah, he said. I think I do. She waited. He set the photo down very carefully, the way he'd set the November letter down on her bed hours ago. The way he set things down when they were fragile. Her name is Karen Lyle, he said. She was a field intelligence officer attached to my unit for about 4 months last year. He paused. I haven't seen or heard from her since the mission ended. What mission? He looked at her. One that wasn't supposed to follow me home. The clock on the nightstand read 12:44. Down the hall, Lily was still sleeping, peaceful and perfect, and completely unaware that the night had just become something entirely different from what any of them had expected. Ethan picked up his phone, made a call. It answered on the second ring. He said without introduction, I need you to run a name, Karen Lyle, former field intelligence, and I need to know if she was in the city 3 days ago. He listened for a second. I know what time it is. Run it anyway. He hung up. Looked at Maya. Go sleep, he said. I'll keep watch. Ethan, Maya. His voice was steady and quiet and completely certain. The version of him she'd heard in the background of all 23 letters without ever having seen it directly. I have this. I promise you I have this. Go get some sleep. She looked at him for a long moment. She looked at the photos, the letters, the sealed envelope that had started everything. She thought about the year and a half that had brought them to this particular moment in this particular room, and she thought about how strange it was that the truth had finally come out. Not through some grand gesture or perfect moment, but through a stranger sitting in a car across the street, and a woman who couldn't stay out of her sister's life, and a box of letters that were never supposed to be found. She walked to the doorway, stopped. "Ethan?" "Yeah." "When this is done, whatever this is, I want to read the other letters to you, out loud." She held his gaze. All 23. He looked at her. Something in his face that wasn't quite a smile, but was warmer than anything she'd seen from him all night. "Yeah," he said. "I'd like that." She went to her room. He sat down at the desk, pulled his phone toward him, and started working. The sealed letter was still there. She'd left it on the corner of the desk when she walked out. He reached over without thinking, and moved it to the center where he could see it. And kept watch. He didn't sleep. He hadn't expected to. 8 months in a combat zone had rewired something in his nervous system that civilian life hadn't fully undone, and tonight, with the photos on the desk and Karen Lyle's name sitting in his mouth like something bitter, sleep wasn't even a consideration. He sat at the desk with his phone and worked the problem the way he'd been trained to work problems methodically without emotion, one thread at a time. The call he'd made at 12:44 was to Danny Reeves, his former unit's communications specialist, now working private security consulting out of Atlanta. Danny was the kind of man who answered phones at any hour without complaint, and who had access to databases that existed in the space between official and unofficial. Ethan trusted him completely and asked him for very little, which meant when he asked, Danny delivered. By 1:15 a.m., Danny called back. "Karen Lyle," Danny said. No preamble. "Discharged 14 months ago, not voluntary. There's a flag on her file, nothing criminal, administrative, but the kind of administrative that means somebody above her pay grade made a decision about her continued service." "What kind of flag?" "Conduct. Specifically unauthorized collection of personal data on non-combatant civilians and allied personnel." A pause. "Ethan, she was collecting information on people she worked with, not just targets." He kept his voice flat. "Including me." "The flag doesn't specify names, but the timing lines up with the end of your overlap. The 4 months she was attached to your unit." He exhaled slowly through his nose. "She was in this city 3 days ago." "I know. I already pulled her card activity before you asked. She checked into a motel 8 blocks from your address on Thursday, checked out Saturday." Another pause. "Today's Sunday. She checked out this morning. She's gone. As of 9 a.m. this morning, yeah. Card activity puts her on a highway heading north as of 2 hours ago." He sat with that for a second. She'd been watching. She'd left. And then someone who sounded like her had called Maya's phone at midnight and told them to look at the background of the photo. "Danny," he said, "is there any way she made the call herself?" "You mean the warning call?" "Yeah. It's possible," Danny said carefully. "If she put the third photo in that envelope, and if she's the one who told you to look at it, then she's not running a surveillance op. She's trying to tell you something. Or she's been watching something else, and we stumbled into the middle of it. Also possible." Danny's voice shifted slightly. "Ethan, the flag on her file. The unauthorized data collection. It wasn't random. The report says she was building profiles. Ongoing, systematic. People she'd been around." A beat. "The question you should be asking isn't why she was watching your apartment. It's who told her to start," Ethan said. "Yeah." He hung up at 1:22 a.m. He sat in the dark of his bedroom with the 3 photos and the sealed letter and the knowledge that Karen Lyle had been discharged for building profiles on people she worked alongside, and he thought about the 4 months she'd been attached to his unit, and he thought about what she might have seen, and he thought about what any of that had to do with a woman asleep down the hall who worked the ER and made coffee for 2 and had spent 8 months writing letters she never sent. He couldn't connect it, not yet. The threads were there, but the pattern wasn't visible, and forcing a pattern when you didn't have enough information was how people made critical errors. He needed more. At 1:40 a.m., he heard Maya's door open. He heard her in the bathroom water-running cabinet opening the small sounds of a person who woke up and couldn't go back. He waited. The water stopped. Her door didn't close again. A minute later, she appeared in his doorway. She'd changed into a sweatshirt, and she was holding her phone. "You found something," she said. It wasn't a question. She read him well enough to see it. "Come sit down," he said. She came in. She sat on the edge of the bed, same spot she'd been sitting when all of this started, when he'd first walked in and found her holding the letters. She looked at his face and waited without pushing. He told her everything Danny had said, all of it. He didn't soften it or edit it because she'd asked him not to be careful, and he was going to honor that even when it was uncomfortable. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. She was collecting profiles, Maya said, on people she worked with. Yes. And she was attached to your unit for 4 months. Yes. So she knows things about you, personal things, enough to find your address, find this apartment. Apparently. Maya looked at her phone. And someone told her to start. Someone directed her to your unit specifically. She looked up. Ethan, I need to say something. Say it. I'm not scared, she said. I want you to know that. I work the ER. I've had psych patients. I've had violent situations. I've been in rooms with people in crisis. I'm not going to fall apart. She held his gaze. But I need you to tell me the full truth. Not the managed version. The actual truth. I know, he said. That's what I just did. Is there more? He considered it. There's something I haven't said yet because I'm still working through whether it matters. She waited. Karen Lyle was attached to my unit for 4 months, he said slowly. In that time she was professional, good at her job, but there were 2 incidents, small things, nothing that got flagged at the time, where I noticed her paying attention to things she shouldn't have been. He paused. I noticed she'd looked through my personal gear once. I didn't report it because I couldn't prove intent and I didn't want to make an accusation without evidence. I filed it away. You noticed, Maya said quietly. The same words from her letter, coming back around. I noticed, he confirmed. I think she knew that I noticed. And I think she's been carrying that particular awareness for 14 months since the discharge. Maya looked at the photos again. You think she's not a threat? I think if she wanted to be a threat, she had 3 days and an empty apartment to make her move, and she didn't. She watched, and she left, and she made a phone call that was designed to make us look more carefully. He leaned forward. That's not threat behavior, that's warning behavior. Warning us about what? That's what I don't know yet. Maya pulled her knees up onto the bed, made herself smaller in the way people do when they're thinking hard. He noticed that too, the way she thought with her whole body going inward. He'd seen it before but never said anything. Now he knew she'd probably noticed him noticing. Ethan, she said, can I tell you something that might be nothing? Tell me. Last week, Wednesday, I came home from a night shift around 7 a.m., and there was a man in the lobby. Not a resident, I know all the residents by face. He said he was there for the super, which is possible, people come for the super. But he was looking at the mailboxes. She paused. And he looked at me for just a second too long. Did he say anything? No, I went past him to the elevator and that was it. I forgot about it because I was exhausted. She looked at Ethan. But Wednesday was 5 days ago. And Karen Lyle checked into the motel 3 days ago. So if someone else was here before her, then she wasn't first, Ethan said. They looked at each other. The clock read 1:58 a.m. Okay, he said. He stood up, made a decision the way he always made decisions, completely without hedging. I need to make one more call, and then I need you to do something for me. What? I need you to think about whether there's anyone connected to you, not to me, to you, who would have a reason to want information about this apartment, this address, your routine. She blinked. You think this might be about me? I think Karen Lyle was tracking me. I think someone else might have been tracking you. And I think whatever they both found led them to the same front door. He held her eyes. Is there anyone? She started to say no automatically, then stopped herself. She thought about it the way he'd asked her to genuinely, without dismissing. She went through the last year and a half in her head the way you go through a drawer when something's missing methodically, even the sections you're sure of. And then she stopped. There's a patient, she said slowly. He waited. About 4 months ago, I had a patient in the ERGSW gunshot wound, non-fatal. He came in critical. We stabilized him. He was transferred to the surgical floor. She was choosing her words carefully. He said something to me while I was working on him. He was mostly out of it, so I flagged it as trauma response and moved on. But he said... She stopped. He said, "Tell Walker I kept my mouth shut." The room went completely still. Ethan didn't move. Tell Walker. I didn't make the connection at the time, she said. Walker is a common name. He was in shock. I assumed it was... I don't know what I assumed. I wrote it in the notes as non-responsive rambling and moved on because we had 3 other critical patients that night. What was his name? I can't tell you that. HIPAA. Maya. I cannot tell you his name, she said firmly. But I can tell you he discharged himself against medical advice 2 days later. And I can tell you I never saw him again. He sat back down. Slowly. The way you sit down when something just reorganized itself in your head, and you need to let the new configuration settle. Tell Walker I kept my mouth shut. A gunshot wound patient. 4 months ago. An ER nurse who lived with a veteran named Walker, who hadn't connected it because why would she? Because the world wasn't supposed to be that small, that tangled. But sometimes it was. Ethan, she said. Her voice was very controlled. What was Karen Lyle's job specifically in your unit? Intelligence, he said. Field assessment. She evaluated sources, people who were passing information. Informants. In the broadest sense. Maya pressed her fingers against her mouth for a second. Then, what if the man in my ER wasn't just a patient? What if he was someone connected to whatever operation Karen Lyle was flagged for? What if he came in, said that to me, said your name, and someone found out? He stood up, crossed the room, sat on the bed beside her, close, deliberate. Not romantic, just present. The way you sit next to someone when the information is heavy enough to need another body nearby to hold it. If that's true, he said quietly, then someone connected your address to my name 4 months ago, and they've been sitting on it. Until you came home, she said. Until I came home. They sat with that for a moment. Down the hall, Lily made a small sound in her sleep. Both of them went completely still until it passed, and her breathing settled back to even. The instinct was identical in both of them, and neither of them acknowledged it, because it didn't need to be acknowledged. It just was. She stays safe, Ethan said. Not a question, not a plan, a statement of fact. Yes, Maya said. Same tone. He got up and made the second call. This one took longer. The person on the other end asked more questions, needed more context, pushed back twice. Ethan held firm both times without raising his voice. When he hung up, it was 2:31 a.m. Someone's going to pull the ER records, he said. Not illegally. There's a liaison process for cases that intersect with active intelligence matters. He looked at her. They'll need to talk to you. When? Tomorrow. Later today, technically. He checked his watch. I bought us until morning. She nodded. Okay. Okay. Ethan, I've been calm this whole time. I'm still calm. She looked at him steadily. I'm good in emergencies. It's the quiet that gets me. He looked at her for a long moment. The quiet gets me too, he said. Just differently. That hung in the air between them, something true and personal, and probably more vulnerable than either of them was used to being at 2:30 in the morning after everything that had already happened tonight. Then Maya said very practically, "Are we safe right now? Tonight?" "Yes," he said, and he meant it. Karen Lyle was gone. The lobbyman was unconfirmed. The apartment was locked, and he was awake, and he knew how to keep watch. "Tonight, yes." "Then I'm going to make coffee," she said, "because neither of us is sleeping, and I need something to do with my hands." She got up. He followed her to the kitchen. She made coffee with the efficiency of someone who'd done it half asleep 1,000 times. He watched her move around the kitchen, his kitchen, the one she'd learned as well as her own, and thought about the man in the ER saying, "Tell Walker I kept his mouth shut," and thought about the terrible specific coincidence of Maya being the nurse on duty that night. Or maybe not a coincidence at all. She poured 2 mugs, set one in front of him, sat down. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Yeah." "The mission, the one that wasn't supposed to follow you home." She wrapped both hands around her mug. "How much danger is this?" He considered giving her the managed version, decided against it. "I don't know yet. If Karen Lyle is warning us, it means she thinks there's something to warn us about. If someone directed her to build profiles on my unit, then someone with resources had a reason to." He paused. "But I've been gone 8 months. Whatever operation this touches on, it's not current. It's old. Someone's protecting something that already happened." "Protecting it from you. Protecting it from being exposed." He looked at his coffee. "There's a difference between someone who wants to threaten you and someone who wants to monitor you. Threat means you have something they want or need to stop. Monitoring means they want to know what you know and when you know it. Which one is this? Right now, monitoring." He met her eyes. "Which means as long as we don't know the specific thing they're worried about, we're not in direct danger. We're just being watched to see if we get close to it. And if we get close to it..." He didn't answer immediately. She tilted her head. "Ethan?" "Let's not get close to it," he said. She almost laughed. "Great plan." "It's a starting point." She smiled, the first real one she'd managed since his bedroom door had become the site of the most complicated conversation of the last year and a half. It was small and tired, but it was real, and he felt it land the way small, real things land when everything else is complicated. At 3:10 a.m., his phone vibrated. A text from Danny. He read it again. "What?" Maya said. He turned the phone so she could see the screen. Danny's message said Karen Lyle checked into a second motel 20 minutes ago, different city. But she made a call from the room, traced to a landline. "I know whose landline. Call me." He called Danny immediately. Danny answered on the first ring. The landline she called belongs to a retired 2-star general named Harold Price, former intelligence oversight, retired 18 months ago under circumstances that were also administrative, and also the kind of administrative that means something happened. Ethan went very still. "Price," he said. "You know the name." "I know the name." He did. He knew it the way you know the name of someone who exists at the edge of things you weren't supposed to know about, heard in briefings attached to operations that didn't have clean endings, a name that came with a particular quality of silence from the people who knew what it meant. Price was connected to an operation about 2 years ago, pre-deployment. I was peripherally involved in the medical side. There was an incident, a source got burned. It was handled internally. Handled how? I don't know. I wasn't in that room. I just knew that one of the people I'd treated ended up not being where they were supposed to be afterward. He stopped. He was moving toward something. He could feel the shape of it starting to come clear. Danny. The man who got burned. His name started with K. I can't confirm that from here. But you're not denying it. A pause. I'm not denying it. He lowered the phone, looked at Maya. She was watching him with the kind of focused attention that didn't need explanation. She'd been in enough crisis situations to know when the information was arriving and to wait for it to land. The man in your ER, he said. 4 months ago. The GSW. Yes? His first name. Without the last name. His first name. She looked at him carefully, weighing it. She said Kevin. The name sat between them. Kevin. K. A burned source. A 2-star general with administrative retirement. Karen Lyle building profiles. 8 months of a man named Ethan Walker deployed overseas, while someone quietly arranged surveillance around his home address. Kevin had come into Maya's ER with a gunshot wound and said, "Tell Walker I kept my mouth shut," which meant Kevin knew Ethan's name, which meant Kevin knew about Ethan's involvement in the medical side of the operation, which meant Kevin wasn't random. He'd been looking for a connection to Ethan, and he'd found one in the most unexpected place, an ER nurse in the same city who happened to be his roommate. "Someone shot Kevin," Ethan said. "He survived. He ended up in your ER. He used the only connection he had to me to try to send a message." He set the phone down. "And someone found out he was alive and was talking." "Which is why Karen Lyle started watching," Maya said. She was following it now, fast and clear. "Not to threaten us, to see if the message got through, to see whose side she needed to be on," he said. "If Kevin's message reached me, then I become a problem for Price. If it didn't, if Maya never connected Walker to me, then I'm just a soldier who came home and nothing happened." "But I did hear it," she said. "I just didn't put it together." "And Karen Lyle's been watching to see if I would. And tonight she decided I had." Maya looked at the clock. 3:22 a.m. "She called to warn us, which means she's not working for Price. She switched sides. Or she was never fully on his side to begin with." He picked his phone back up, called Danny again. "I need you to find Kevin. GSW patient first name Kevin discharged against medical advice from St. Christopher's Hospital approximately 4 months ago. Local address if he has one." "Ethan, I know, do it anyway." He hung up. Maya was looking at the table processing. He could see her working through it, the nurse in her, the systematic mind recataloguing that night in the ER with new information overlaid on the old memory. "He was scared," she said suddenly. "Kevin. He was in shock, but he was scared. Not of the pain. I've seen enough patients to know the difference. He was scared of being found." She looked up. "I thought it was just trauma response, but he kept asking who else was in the waiting room. He asked twice." "He was checking if anyone followed him in." "Yes." She exhaled. "God, I missed it." "You weren't supposed to see it," he said. "None of this was supposed to come near you." "But it did. But it did," he agreed. At 3:41 a.m., Lily's voice came from down the hall. Not scared, just that particular half-awake call that kids do when they surface briefly from sleep and need to confirm the world is still in place. "Daddy." Both of them moved at the same time. Ethan got there first. He was already standing, but Maya was 1 step behind him. He pushed the door open, and Lily was sitting up, eyes still mostly closed, hair in the spectacular chaos that happened to her hair every single night. "Hey, Bug," Ethan said quietly. He sat on the edge of her bed. "I'm here." "You're really home," she said. Not a question, confirming something she'd already decided while asleep. "I'm really home." She looked past him at Maya in the doorway. "Maya's up too." "Yeah, we were just talking. About grown-up stuff." "Yeah." She considered this with the weighted seriousness of a 6-year-old, and then said, "Okay," and lay back down. She reached out and grabbed Ethan's wrist with one hand. He stayed where he was. She was asleep again in under 2 minutes. He sat there until he was sure. Then he carefully extracted his wrist from her grip and came back to the doorway where Maya was waiting. They walked back to the kitchen together. She refilled both mugs without asking. He sat down, looked at his hands. "When this is sorted," he said, "when the liaison talks to you and Danny tracks Kevin down, and we understand the full shape of this, I want to talk about the practical things." She looked at him. "What practical things?" "The arrangement," he said. "The roommate arrangement." She went still. "Because I'm not interested in arrangements anymore. he said. He looked up from his hands. I told you earlier, I'm not good at half measures. I meant that. And I'm not saying we do something reckless. I'm not saying we change everything overnight. Lily needs stability more than she needs speed, and I'm aware of that. He held her eyes. But I'm done calling it an arrangement. I'm done calling you the roommate. Whatever we call what this actually is, that's what I want to call it. She looked at him for a long moment. You read the letter, she said. I read the letter. All of it. Every word. She was quiet. Then, the part at the end, where I said I need to know if I should leave. Yeah. What's the answer? He held her gaze. You already know the answer. She let out a breath, slow. Like something she'd been holding for 8 months finally had somewhere to go. Say it anyway, she said. He leaned forward, put his arms on the table, looked at her the way he'd been looking at things that mattered for 6 years, direct, without flinching, without the wall. Stay, he said. One word, the same way she'd written Ethan on the envelope. Just one word, everything in it. She didn't answer immediately. She just looked at him, and he let her look, and the kitchen was quiet, and the coffee was warm, and down the hall his daughter was sleeping safely, and whatever was coming in the morning, the liaison. The call from Danny, the full truth about Kevin and Price and Karen Lyle, it was all still there, all still real. But so was this. At 4:07 a.m., Danny called back. Ethan picked up immediately. You found him. I found him, Danny said. And Ethan, he's been trying to find you. He left 3 messages with your unit's non-emergency contact in the last 2 weeks. They weren't forwarded because you were in transit. A pause. He's in the city. He's been here for a month. Waiting, Danny confirmed. And he's not alone. He's got documentation, Ethan. 14 months of it. Whatever Price did, Kevin's been building a record of it this whole time. That's why they shot him. That's why Karen Lyle got flagged. That's why someone's been watching your door. Ethan stood up from the table. Maya watched him stand. She read his face. She didn't ask anything, just waited. Send me his contact, Ethan said. Already done. He hung up. He looked at the text from Danny. The phone number. The address. 8 blocks away. The man who'd walked into Maya's ER 4 months ago and said, Tell Walker I kept my mouth shut, who'd been waiting in this city for a month for Ethan to come home. He showed Maya the screen. She read it, looked up. What do we do? He looked at the clock. 4:09 a.m. He looked at the hallway where his daughter was sleeping. He looked at Maya. We wait until morning, he said, and then we go talk to him. Together, she asked. He didn't hesitate. Together, he said. They didn't sleep. There was no pretending otherwise. By 5 a.m., the coffee was gone, and Maya had made a second pot, and Ethan had moved from the kitchen table to the couch, not to sleep, but because the chair was making his back ache, and he'd learned a long time ago that there was no virtue in unnecessary discomfort. Maya sat at the other end, with her feet tucked under her, and her phone face down on the cushion between them, and neither of them was talking much, but it wasn't the silence of people who had nothing to say. It was the silence of people who had said enough for one night and were just existing in the same space, which was its own kind of communication. At 5:47, Lily appeared in the doorway. She was wearing her dinosaur pajamas and one sock, and she was holding her stuffed elephant, which she'd had since she was 2, and which had lost one eye and most of its trunk stuffing, and which she refused to replace, because as she'd explained very seriously to Maya, once replacing him would mean he died, and she wasn't going to do that to Gerald. Gerald was the elephant's name. Ethan had not named him. Lily had decided that herself sometime around her 4th birthday, and had never wavered. She looked at her father on the couch. She looked at Maya. She looked at the coffee mugs on the table. Did you stay up all night? She asked. Some of it, Ethan said. She considered this. Were you talking about grown-up stuff again? Yeah, bug. She walked over and climbed directly onto his lap with the complete absence of self-consciousness that only small children and very confident adults manage. She settled in against his chest, Gerald tucked under one arm. She reached out and grabbed Maya's hand without looking at her, just reached sideways, and found it like she knew exactly where it would be and held it. Neither Ethan nor Maya said anything. Lily yawned enormously. "Are you staying?" she asked. She was asking her father, but she was looking at the middle distance, the way she did when she asked questions she'd been holding for a while. "I'm staying," Ethan said. "For how long?" "For good." She processed this. "Maya's staying too," she said. Not a question, a statement. 6 years old and absolutely certain. Maya's hand tightened on hers. "Yeah," Ethan said quietly. "Maya's staying too." Lily nodded, like this confirmed something she'd already decided. Then she closed her eyes and went back to sleep, sitting upright against her father's chest, still holding Maya's hand, Gerald wedged between them, completely trusting, completely at peace. Ethan looked at Maya over the top of Lily's head. Maya looked back at him. He didn't say anything. She didn't either, but she didn't let go of Lily's hand. By 7:30, Lily was awake for real and demanding pancakes with the confidence of someone who understood that her father had just come home and the normal rules about sugar before noon were temporarily suspended. Ethan made them. He was a better cook than Maya, and both of them knew it, though she was faster, and Lily sat at the kitchen table, narrating a detailed account of everything that had happened in the last 8 months, filling in all the gaps that the phone calls hadn't covered, talking with her whole body the way she always did when she was excited, hands moving, eyes wide, pivoting between topics with the beautiful disregard for narrative structure that 6-year-olds consider perfectly reasonable. Ethan listened to every word. He stood at the stove making pancakes and listened to his daughter talk, and he didn't check his phone once, which Maya noticed. She sat across from Lily and offered occasional confirmations. "Tell him about the Halloween costume. Tell him what Mrs. Patterson's cat did." And Lily needed no encouragement, but appreciated the cues anyway. It was, Maya thought, a completely ordinary Sunday morning, except for everything underneath it. At 9 a.m., Ethan looked at her across the kitchen, a look that meant it was time. She nodded. He asked Mrs. Patterson from down the hall if Lily could come watch cartoons with her for a couple of hours. Mrs. Patterson, who was 71 and had been delighted to see Ethan the night before, and had already fed Lily a cookie, before Maya could object, said absolutely, and Lily went without complaint because Mrs. Patterson had cable and they didn't, and the Saturday morning lineup was, in Lily's professional opinion, superior. Then Ethan and Maya went to find Kevin. The address Danny had sent was 8 blocks north, a weekly rate motel, the kind that asked no questions, that took cash, that had a parking lot visible from the lobby. They walked because the morning was clear and because walking gave Ethan time to look at the street the way he looked at streets, which Maya was realizing meant differently than most people did. He was always 2 seconds ahead of himself in space, noting exits and angles and the particular quality of stillness that meant something was present, versus the quality that meant something was merely empty. She matched his pace. She didn't fill the silence. Room 14, ground floor. Ethan knocked 3 times. A specific pattern, not aggressive, not casual. Deliberate. 15 seconds passed. The door opened on the chain. One eye in the gap. Brown alert, exhausted in the way that had nothing to do with one night's bad sleep. "Walker," the man said. "Kevin," Ethan said. The chain came off. The door opened. Kevin was 40, maybe 42, with the build of someone who'd been fit and had spent the last year surviving rather than training. He had a scar on his neck that was still relatively new, not the GSW. Maya had treated something older. He looked at Ethan for a long moment, and then he looked at Maya, and something moved in his face. "You're the nurse," he said. "I'm the nurse," she confirmed. He stepped back. They came in. The room was minimal and organized in a way that spoke of discipline rather than comfort. No personal items visible except a laptop and a cardboard box that had the particular density of something important. Kevin sat in the single chair. Ethan sat on the edge of the bed. Maya stood near the door, not blocking it, not anxious, just present. You got my message? Kevin said. 4 months late, Ethan said. But yes. Kevin nodded slowly. He looked at the box. I spent 14 months putting this together, he said. After the operation ended. After they burned me, and I realized they were going to keep burning anyone who got close. He looked at Ethan. I knew you were in the medical rotation. I knew what you saw. Not all of it, you didn't have clearance for all of it, but enough. Enough that Price would consider you a liability if he knew you were looking. I wasn't looking, Ethan said. I know, but you noticed things. Kevin said it the same way Maya had said it the night before, and she saw Ethan register the echo. People who notice things become problems for men like Price, even if they don't know what they noticed. What did I notice? Ethan asked. Kevin reached for the box, opened it, pulled out a file physical paper printed flagged with colored tabs. He held it out. Ethan took it, opened it. Maya watched his face as he read. She'd become fluent in Ethan Walker's face in the last 12 hours. Or maybe she'd been fluent for longer and was only now allowed to show it, and she saw him read 3 lines and stop. Then read them again. Then close the file carefully. How long has Price been running this? He said. The diversion program, 5 years, Kevin said. Medical supply diversions. Equipment, medication, field supplies. Redirected from active combat units and sold through a third-party chain. The units reported the losses as combat damage. Nobody audited it because why would you audit combat damage reports from a war zone? He leaned forward. The men in those units went without supplies, Ethan. Not catastrophically, Price was careful he didn't divert so much it was obvious, but enough. Enough that decisions got made in the field that might have gone differently with more supplies. Enough that people died who might not have. Ethan was very still. Maya understood now why the room felt the way it felt. She was in ER medicine. She knew what it meant to be without the right supply at the wrong moment. She knew the arithmetic of it, how one missing item in the right crisis became a person who didn't make it. She knew it in her hands and her chest and the part of her brain that processed loss at a professional remove, and then felt it later at 3 a.m. in the quiet. Ethan knew it too. Different context, same arithmetic. I was a source, Kevin said. I was inside one of the third-party chains. I was supposed to testify. Price found out, and they burned me. Pulled my cover, made sure I couldn't surface without being a target. The shooting was a message. They found me anyway. He looked at his hands. I discharged myself from your ER because I didn't know how much they knew about where I was. I didn't know if they'd come to the hospital. They might have, Maya said quietly. Kevin looked at her. I know. I'm sorry. Putting you in that position wasn't something I chose deliberately. I said Walker's name because I was trying to leave a thread, in case something happened to me, in case the documentation didn't get to the right people on its own. The documentation is in that box, Ethan said. And on a server, Kevin said. And with a lawyer, and with one journalist who doesn't know what she has yet, but will know how to use it when the time comes. He sat back. I didn't come here to put you in danger. I came here because I ran out of other options, and I needed someone who was in a position to be believed. A combat medic with a clean record who was present during the relevant operation period. Someone who could corroborate the timeline without having been part of it. You need a witness, Ethan said. I need someone who can say yes, the supply levels in my unit were inconsistent with what was reported. Yes, I noticed. Yes, I can testify to that under oath. Kevin looked at him steadily. That's all. I'm not asking you to be the story. I'm asking you to be the part that makes the story credible. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. He looked at the file in his hands. He set it on the bed beside him carefully. Karen Lyle, he said. Kevin's jaw tightened. She was assigned to build profiles on potential witnesses. She was supposed to identify who knew what and report back to Price's people. A pause. She stopped reporting about 6 weeks ago. She told me she made contact 3 weeks ago, that she wasn't going to burn witnesses for a man who'd been letting soldiers go without medical supplies for 5 years. He paused. "She's the one who warned you last night." "She called Maya's phone," Ethan said. "She was watching to see if you connected things. When it looked like you had, she wanted to make sure you knew to be careful." Kevin looked at Maya. "She mentioned you specifically. She said the nurse seemed solid. She said she wasn't going to let a civilian get caught in the middle of this without at least a heads up." Maya absorbed that. A woman she'd never met who'd been surveilling her for weeks, who'd decided at midnight that she deserved a warning anyway. She didn't know what to do with that exactly, except to register it as a specific kind of complicated human decency. "What do you need from me?" Ethan said. "A statement. Formal legal to the Oversight Committee that's been quietly building a case for the last 8 months. They have Price in their sights, but they need corroboration of the operational period. Your unit was directly affected." Kevin met his eyes. "And I need you to not disappear. I need you to be reachable. I need to know that when this surfaces, and it will surface, it's weeks away at most, you'll be there." Ethan looked at Maya. She looked back at him. She didn't tell him what to do. She wasn't going to. She'd written 23 letters to a man she believed was capable of making his own decisions, and she wasn't going to contradict herself now. But she held his gaze, and she didn't look away. He turned back to Kevin. "Send me the contact at the Oversight Committee," he said. "I'll make the statement today." Kevin exhaled. It was a small sound, but it carried the weight of 14 months of carrying something alone. "Thank you," he said. "Don't thank me," Ethan said. He picked up the file. "Thank me when it's done." They left the motel at 10:20, walked back the same 8 blocks. The morning had gotten warmer, and the street was busy now, people with dogs, a woman pushing a stroller, a man selling coffee from a cart on the corner. They were halfway back when Maya said, "Are you okay?" He walked another half block before answering. "I'm thinking about something Kevin said, about the supply diversions, about decisions made in the field with less than what was reported." He looked straight ahead. "I lost a patient once, 19 years old. We were short on one specific item, and I made the call to use a substitute, and it wasn't enough. I told myself it was the situation. I told myself it was circumstances beyond anyone's control." He stopped walking. "It might not have been." She stopped beside him. "I don't know that," he said. "I might never know that specifically, but it's possible that kid died because someone was making money off a diversion program, and my unit reported the shortage as combat loss, and nobody ever connected it." He was looking at the middle distance. "That's what I'm sitting with right now." She didn't offer comfort immediately. She understood both as a nurse and as someone who knew him now in the particular way that the last 12 hours had made possible, that comfort offered too fast was just noise. Sometimes you had to let a thing be what it was before you could move through it. After a moment she said, "Then you make the statement. And you make sure the committee has what it needs. And whatever accountability is possible, you make it happen." She looked at him. "That's what you do with it." He looked at her. "Yeah," he said. "Yeah, that's right." They started walking again. At the corner his hand found hers. Not dramatic. Not a gesture. Just a hand finding another hand the way hands do when they've decided they're done waiting for the right moment. She held on. They walked the last 4 blocks like that. Mrs. Patterson returned Lily at 11:15. Lily talking at full volume about something the cartoon cat had done that she considered both hilarious and deeply unfair. And Mrs. Patterson accepting the coffee Maya offered with the satisfied expression of a woman who had seen many things over many years and was pleased with what she was currently observing. The afternoon moved the way Sunday afternoons do when you've been awake all night, and the worst of something has passed slowly warmly with the particular golden quality of relief. Ethan made his formal statement by video call at 1 p.m. in his bedroom with the door closed, while Maya kept Lily occupied in the living room with a puzzle that was technically for ages 8 and up, but that Lily approached with the focused intensity of someone who did not acknowledge suggested age ranges. He was on the call for 40 minutes. When he came out, he looked like a man who had put something down that he'd been carrying for a long time. He sat on the couch. Lily immediately crawled over him in search of a better puzzle-adjacent position. He let her. "Done?" Maya asked. "Done," he said. "They'll be in touch. It'll take weeks, maybe longer. But it's in motion." She nodded. She went back to the puzzle. He watched her help Lily fit a corner piece with the patient persistence that he'd been watching for 18 months without properly naming, and he named it now in his own head, where it had been waiting for him to be honest enough to look. At 2 in the afternoon, Lily fell asleep on the couch with Gerald and a blanket that Maya produced from somewhere, and Ethan carried her to her room without waking her, which was a skill he'd developed over years and was absurdly proud of. When he came back, Maya was in the kitchen. He sat at the table. She sat across the corner from him, the same position as last night, different light, different weight in the room. She reached over and put the shoebox on the table between them. He looked at it. "You said you wanted to hear them," she said. "All 23. "I did say that." "We've got the afternoon." She met his eyes. "Lily's asleep. The committee has your statement. Kevin has what he needs." She put her hand on the lid of the box. "The rest of it can wait." He looked at the box, at her hand on top of it, at her face. "Read me the first one," he said. She opened the box. She picked up the first letter, September, the one she'd written 3 weeks after he left the first one, when Lily had cried herself to sleep 2 nights in a row and Maya hadn't known what to say. She unfolded it. She read. Her voice was steady at first. Then it wasn't, and she didn't try to make it steady again. She just read. And Ethan listened the way he'd listened to Lily that morning, completely without reservation, without the part of himself that usually kept a portion back. She read through 10 of them before she stopped. "You okay?" he asked. "Yes," she said. Then, "No. Some of these are, I didn't realize how much I was carrying until I'm reading them out loud. You don't have to finish today. I know." She looked at him. "But I want to. I want you to hear all of it. I want there to be no version of things between us that isn't the whole version." He reached across the table and covered her hand with his. "Okay," he said. "Then read me the rest." She picked up the 11th letter. They sat at that kitchen table for another hour. She read all 23. He listened to all 23. Some of them were small logistics of the apartment. Funny things, Lily said, observations about her ER co-workers that were sharp and dry and made him smile. Some of them were large. The November letter she'd already read him. 2 others that came close. One written in January deep winter that was just 1 page and said more in the space between sentences than most people managed in full paragraphs. When she finished the last one, she folded it and put it back in the box and closed the lid. The kitchen was very quiet. "You're a good writer," he said. She laughed, surprised out of it, genuine. "That's what you have to say." "I have a lot to say," he said, "but that's where I'm starting." He looked at her. "You're a good writer, and you're the most disciplined person I've ever met in my life, which is saying something because I've spent 6 years surrounded by military personnel, and you're still more disciplined than any of them." "That's not a compliment," she said. "It's a complicated compliment," he said. "It means you held all of this, all 23 of these, by yourself for 8 months because you decided I didn't need the weight of it. And I want you to hear me when I say I would have wanted the weight of it. Every single letter, every single week." She looked at him. "I would have written back," he said. "I told you that last night, and I meant it. I would have written back to every one." She reached into the box. She pulled out the sealed letter, the one from November. The one that had started everything, the one he'd already read. She turned it over in her hands once. Then she held it out to him. "Keep it," she said. He took it. He looked at it for a moment, then put it in his shirt pocket, flat against his chest. She watched him do it, and didn't say anything because there was nothing to say. Some gestures are their own complete sentence. At 3:15, Lily woke up and came into the kitchen announcing that she was hungry, and also that she had decided the entire family should go to the park, and also that Gerald needed fresh air because he'd been inside too long. She said the entire family with the casual certainty of someone for whom this phrase had an obvious referent that required no elaboration. Ethan looked at Maya. Maya looked at Ethan. "Park sounds good," Ethan said. "Gerald probably does need some air," Maya agreed. Lily was already getting her shoes. They went to the park. Lily ran ahead. Gerald tucked under one arm, operating at her default speed, which was slightly faster than comfortable for adults, but still within visual range, which Ethan had once explained to Maya was the military term for acceptable civilian perimeter, and which had made her laugh for a genuinely unreasonable amount of time. They walked at an adult pace behind her, side by side, close enough that their shoulders occasionally touched without either of them adjusting away from it. The afternoon was warm and ordinary, and full of the specific texture of a life that was real, not imagined, not planned, not described in an unsent letter, but actually physically, undeniably real. Lily stopped at the swings and turned around. She looked at them both with the appraising expression of a small person who had been thinking about something since this morning and had come to a conclusion. "Are you guys together now?" she asked. Neither of them had rehearsed this. Neither of them had discussed what to say, or how to say it, or when, because the morning had moved too fast, and the afternoon had been full, and there were some conversations you just hadn't gotten to yet. Ethan looked at Maya. She looked at him. He said, "Yeah, Bug, we're together." Lily considered this with great seriousness. "Like for real," she said. "Like you're going to be there when I wake up for real. Not just for now." "For real," he said. "Not just for now." She looked at Maya. "You promise?" Maya crouched down to Lily's level. She looked her in the eye the way she did when she was saying something important. "I promise," she said. Lily reached out and took Maya's face in both her small hands, the way she did specifically when she wanted someone's complete attention, and she said with the total solemn conviction of a 6-year-old who had made up her mind about something fundamental and was not going to be talked out of it. "Good, because I already told my teacher I had 2 people at home who love me." Maya's eyes went bright. She didn't cry. She was too steady for that, too practiced at absorbing impact without showing it. But her eyes went bright, and she pulled Lily into a hug that Lily tolerated for approximately 4 seconds before wriggling free to get on the swings, because there was only so long she was willing to be held when motion was available. Ethan reached down and took Maya's hand as she stood up. She held on, and that was it. Not a grand declaration, or a dramatic resolution, or a perfectly timed moment from a movie. Just a man and a woman and a little girl at a park on a Sunday afternoon, the hard parts behind them, and the real parts beginning the ordinary daily renewable work of choosing each other, which was the only kind of love that lasted. The letters were in a shoebox on a kitchen shelf. The sealed one was in Ethan's pocket. The oversight committee had what it needed. Kevin was safe. Karen Lyle was 2 states away, making her own decisions about what she owed and to whom. Mara was at home, probably worried, definitely sorry entirely herself. And Lily was on the swing, going as high as physics and parental comfort would allow. Shouting at them to watch, watch, watch. "I'm going so high. Watch." They watched. They were always going to watch. That was the truth at the center of everything. Not the letters, not the secrets, not the years of careful silence and careful distance. The truth was simpler and more durable than any of it. Some people, without being asked, without being promised anything in return, simply show up. They show up, and they stay, and they do the daily work of being present. And one day you realize that what you've been calling an arrangement is actually a life. And the person you've been calling a roommate is actually the reason you wanted to come home. Ethan Walker had come home 8 months early and walked through the wrong door at the wrong moment and found something he hadn't known he was missing. He wasn't letting go of it. Not now. Not ever. That was the whole story. That was the only ending that was true.